My guest today is the 2015 Kresge Artist Fellow Desiree Cooper. Cooper is a former attorney. She is also a Pulitzer Prize-nominated journalist and much beloved community activist, originally from Virginia, currently living in Virginia, who resided in Detroit for decades and will always be considered an honorary Detroiter. She's much beloved here, and I am honored to call her my friend. Today's podcast will discuss 4 stories from her award-winning flash fiction collection, Know the Mother. Cooper's fiction, poetry, and essays have appeared in the New York Times, 2023 Flash Fiction America, the Best Small Fictions 2018, Callaloo, Michigan Quarterly Review, The Rumpus, River Teeth, and Best African American Fiction 2010, among other publications. This podcast was recorded at Book Suey, a fabulous cooperatively owned bookstore in Hamtramck, Michigan. My fellow moderator was member owner Eli Sparkman. Eli is the Detroit program and volunteer coordinator for 826 Michigan, a youth writing organization. He is a teaching artist for the Moth and a memoir reader for Split Lip magazine. He is a graduate of Northern Michigan University's MFA program, where he was a flash fiction editor for Passages North. And many, many thanks to Vincent James Perrone, who edited this audio podcast, the first one I've hosted with a live audience. Vincent is also a writer from Detroit. He's the author of the poetry collection Starving Romantic. He is currently based in Charlottesville, Virginia, where he is pursuing an MFA at the University of Virginia. Let's Deconstruct a Story is a podcast for story nerds, hosted by me, Kelly Forden, yet another writer based in Detroit. And now for the show.
Everybody, welcome to Book Suey bookstore on this beautiful Friday night in spring, in almost spring, early spring.
Feels like spring.
For those that don't know, this is a cooperatively ran bookstore. There's about 12 of us who volunteer our time to clerk the store, fill the store with inventory, and try to program literary events like this one that we feel can engage with the community and just have a literary presence in the space. My name's Eli. I'm one of the member owners here, and I'm very grateful to host a brand new type of event, a live podcast recording, everybody. We have our host, Kelly Forden from the Let's Deconstruct a Story podcast. Highly recommend. You got to listen to it. She'll say more, but I understand it as this really in-depth conversation between Kelly and an author about one story in particular. And if you come to any of our writing clubs, you know that we love every word. They all have an impact on the reader. And when you stack them up, there's sort of something tactile and ineffable, I suppose. Today, we're very lucky to host Desiree Cooper, a flash fictioneer after my own heart. I will pass it over to Kelly to introduce more of the podcast.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having us here. I'm thrilled to be here because this is sort of a great marriage between the flash fiction group that you run here and the podcast. The aim of the podcast is for story nerds to learn how to construct stories by reading them and hearing the process that the writers went through as they were writing them. And it's been such a great education for me in particular. I just mostly do it for myself because, that's what you do when you have a podcast. And this is my passion. And I've been so surprised at what you can learn from the writer if you talk to them directly about the process. So I'm thrilled to talk to Desiree tonight about these amazing stories.
I am so happy to be here because, first of all, you brought me home. So this is in the ether for a lot of people who are listening, but we are in the Detroit area in the inner city of Hamtramck, which is in the belly button of Detroit. And we just had some great food, and we are in an old bank that is now a bookstore. I mean, the ambiance, the friendship, the family.
a lot
What can
of
I
plants.
say? It's amazing.
And the selection of books here is
Yeah, it's great.
fantastic. It's curated, right? You guys curate the books
I,
that
I
you
like
enjoy.
I like to think of it as walking around in 14 people's brains at one time. 'Cause
That's
you got your
awesome.
science fiction folks. We have a member owner who's an architect, and helps us design the space and has a great section for that. I'm invested in the independent publishers, and so we have a whole shelf that is alphabetized by small publisher name, which is really cool, but maybe hard to navigate too sometimes. The rest of my member owners.
Yeah, but other writers must love that.
Yeah. Show me the $2 radio.
I love $2 radio.
There you go.
They're fantastic.
I made this shelf for you, Kelly.
Okay. I'm going over there right away. All right. Well, so Desiree is going to read the story first, right? And then we're going to discuss each one. Is that how we'll do it?
Yeah, because I think everyone deserves to hear these stories out loud. They're really beautiful.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the first story in the collection. The collection is called Know the Mother, published by Wayne State University Press in 2016. So it's an oldie and maybe kind of still a goodie on some level. So the first story is called Witching Hour. Why do we wake each night in that spiritless moment between worlds, we mothers and daughters and wives? And why does the night abandon us to twinkling worry, to the rattling breaths of our children, to the hard floor of our long prayers? What fresh dangers tap against the black window? And why do our men snore so easily while the horror gathers? Why is it that at 3:15, that evil drags us from beneath the red wine or white pills to make us sit up and see the world so clearly? Who comes to whisper our names and turn our blood to sludge? Where is the mercy for those of us who lie awake, weeping in the eternal hours before the crucifixion?
Okay. So normally I'm just alone talking to the author, but I'd like to start, if you want to start first, Eli. And then I know you guys have been studying these stories, so maybe we do Eli, someone from the audience, and then me. Sound good?
Yeah, if someone out there is feeling it, please. Yeah, Leo, I'm looking at you. When I first read this story, my immediate reaction was, oh my goodness, somebody did it. They actually wrote a story in all question marks, which I think is something I tried many times and never been able to do. And I just so admired how this one really fit what it felt like to be laying in bed in the middle of the night at the witching hour. And it didn't feel forced or strained. It felt very organic. My first question would be, how did you arrive at this? What was the inspiration for a story in question marks? Was it from a moment like that, or was it a craft endeavor? I'd love to hear.
Wow. It came from being awake in the witching hour, which I'm looking at the audience, and so many are female and so many are nodding. This is a very common experience for us who walk in female bodies, especially at a particular age, where you wake up and it's 3 a.m. It is 3 a.m. And what happens then is you don't mean to be awake, but everything that can keep your eyes open come to your brain. And it's terrifying. And for me, my real experience of this was always going straight to the children and the lists. I raised 2 children, and the list of things that could happen, didn't happen, what did I forget, blah, blah, blah. So I wanted to capture that experience. And it is only questions, Eli. So I wasn't being creative. It was reportage. I was writing exactly what happens. and the kinds of questions, if not verbatim from a particular night, it's this kind of questioning where the scary things lurk, the things that could get us. And how do I protect the ones I love from that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does anyone? Yeah, Leo?
Thank you first. All right, and thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed the contrast between talking about the witching hour and the crucifixion at the end. And it just like slams into you and changes your whole perspective. Did you deliberately want the, I guess, more religious connotation, or did you have like a specific thing in mind? Like, I have an idea when you say crucifixion, what comes to me, but what, I guess, came to you?
Mm-hmm. So witching hour is supposedly a time. There's a whole lot of, if you Google it, you get a whole lot of things. And one of them,
I have the
you
definition.
Googled it?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So in folklore, the witching hour or devil's hour is a time of night that is associated with supernatural events whereby witches, demons, and ghosts are thought to appear and be at their most powerful. Definitions vary and include the hour immediately after midnight and the time between 3 and 4 a.m. And then they show in there the painting of is with the Alp on the woman, the Nightmare, by Fuseli, as like the embodiment of the witching hour.
So that's part of it, and then another part is there is Christian folklore that Jesus Christ was crucified at 3 in the afternoon. And 3 in the morning is exactly 12 hours before the crucifixion. Okay. And so I was conflating the spirituality and the access that women have to other dimensions. And that's why they're called witches.
Okay. Wow.
And so that I can imagine if I were to take this, and it is folklore, it is not theology or scriptural, but I can imagine Mother Mary waking up exactly 12 hours before her child is crucified and having this experience that all women continue to have through the ages, worrying about their child.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, you guys, you asked the question. I was going to ask about the questions because I thought that was a really unique. And then I guess the one is the use of the first person plural in the story. Did it always come to you as first person plural? Or?
It did, but I would have to look at the timeline, and I saw the book back there, Buddha's in the Attic, Julie Otsuka.
Oh yeah.
And when I read that book, I was so fascinated by using the first person plural to describe common experiences, especially amongst women. So if you haven't read that book, that's the book to read. Right. And so it is an imitation of that.
Okay. Yeah, and go ahead. I saw your.
Sorry, I know that I really admire the very beginning of that book, which is very heavy on the first person plural. Another question I had was about starting the collection with this story. Is that part of it signaling that this is stories of collective experience?
Yes, but it's not how I had the manuscript arranged when I submitted it. And the editor is the one that pulled that out and said it's got to start here. So I didn't see that myself.
Gotcha.
So that's Annie.
Annie, yeah, Annie Martin.
It does sort of set the tone that this is a book it's a kind of a female experience,
right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, do you have another question about it?
You said the stories weren't creative in some sense, and in that this is a real experience of having questions in the middle of the night. But on the other hand, I'm curious about that as a fiction making or creative endeavor, to be up and to have your creative brain thinking of different scenarios. And even the type of how harrowing or of an experience that is, thinking about a sense of doubt kind of being something that is one of the primary evils in the world, is to really not know or not be sure about something. And yet to not know for sure is part of what can fuel fiction and to make new things. I'm just curious if you think about that balance there, to think of it as a strength to dream up so many questions in the middle of the night, but also something that makes you vulnerable to so much worry.
Yeah, I feel like as a writer, and all of you are in this audience, and I know you all have walked through life at some point and you go, man, this is going to be a good story. Like, it's hell.
Yeah.
And you're saying, no one will believe this when I write this down. You are having a meta experience of your own existence. Right away, you can tell that this is something that resonates, that's bigger than that moment. And that even if you wrote it down verbatim, the creative process is immediately helping you connect what's happening to you, to what's happening to everyone else, to the human heart. And a lot of people don't get that. They think it's all just happening to them, or they're afraid to speak out, or they have no idea. But a writer kind of can feel that. And so I don't mean to sort of put down well, that wasn't creative. That's exactly what I thought. So I put 5 questions together and threw it in the front of the book. That's not it. What I recognized as that was happening is that I wasn't the only one. This is a story of a lot of us. Mm-hmm. And that's what I wanted to put on the page. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I was going to go into the Alp and all the, but I think we should probably do the next one, because you're going to read them all and stuff. So, but the Alp, the picture of the Alp in the witching hour is more about the woman being vulnerable to attack at that hour. And the way that I saw this story was completely different. The woman worrying about the world around her and the people around her. It didn't.
Well, because her worry was not for herself.
Exactly. Yeah. So in that way, it's sort of, it's different than the traditional.
This is a theme in a lot of the stories, and that is how. So when I went into the collection, it was, how is sexism, which is my primary concern as a writer, how is sexism experienced in the intimate moments of life? So we know what sexism is if there's something on the door that says no women allowed or women go to the back door or whatever. We know, okay, that's one thing. Or you can't have a bank account here in this bank without a man signing it. Okay, those are a lot. But how does it feel when your son comes to you and says, where's my socks? Because I'm the one with the ovaries in the house.
Right.
What is it when your daughter looks at your male partner and says, is that right? Double checking what you said.
Right.
Okay. Those are sexisms that kill. Mm-hmm. Because the people who love you do it to you. And I often talk about vis-a-vis race. There are places where I am not a Black woman. I am a Black woman, for those who are listening. But that disappears, because when I'm with Black people, by and large, I'm not thinking about my Blackness. There is not a place where I'm not thinking about my gender. It follows me to every aspect of my intimate life, unless I'm with my girlfriends. And then we talk about it the whole time. So. And so you will see the stories are dealing with that question. All of them are. And then some layer on sex and race, sex, race, and class. You'll see variations. And one thing that also comes in is the extreme vulnerability that women then feel. Not only are they vulnerable, but they're triply vulnerable because they are a mother. That's another level of vulnerability that's layered on to how we are genderized in our society. And so children take you from, come on, women worry about the night. Women worry about the night. Okay? Women worry hard about their children in the night. It's another level. So you can forget the fear for yourself, and then it goes on to your child. And that's what happens in that story. And there are a couple other stories where women are vulnerable, super vulnerable, because they have a child or are expecting a child at the same time.
Yeah. And we're reading one of those.
Yeah.
Okay. You ready for the next one?
All right. So the next one is the title story called Know the Mother. As I wash my mother's back, her scent fills my nostrils. Already she smells like a garden unearthed, a freshly dug grave. I soak the cloth in warm water and witch hazel. She sighs as I swab her shrunken thighs, her shriveled feet. Don't leave me, I plead beneath my breath. She twitches and my heart leaps. Maybe she's changed her mind and has decided to stay with me a little longer. But for the next 3 hours, she gives me nothing to hold on to, not one fluttering eyelid, not a wan smile of possibility. She's leaving me so easily. I wonder if her love ever rose above duty. 2 months ago, I was bringing warm sheets from the dryer in the basement, and as I reached the top of the stairs, I could hear Mother singing. I dashed around the corner, half expecting to see her remaking the bed, lifting the mattress to miter the corners. But when I reached her room, nothing had changed. Her hair was still a thin layer of down. Her cheeks were still sallow. Her shoulder blades jutted beneath the summer blanket as if she were hiding her favorite book beneath the covers. Yet somehow, as she slept, she was a young woman again, singing. At her bedside, I doze without resting. I dream that my mother is dressed in a black taffeta gown. Her cheeks are rouged with stage makeup, her eyes shimmering. On cue, she makes her way to the curtain. I call her name 3 times, but nothing I say can make her look back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Desiree.
Mm-hmm.
I have so many questions. Maybe the one to start with, maybe it's best to start with the prompts we did in Flash Fiction Club, which we called A Moment as a Microcosm. Thinking that this is someone who has this feeling of their mother leaving. I think it's in the text throughout their life. You can see that this has been imprinted on them. And what we have is an in-scene account of them feeling like they're being left yet again. So we challenged ourselves to write about a moment that felt like it represented the relationship as a whole. Sometimes I wonder about flash fiction. Like, we challenge ourselves to only have so much space, and there's our whole life to pick from, and there's a whole plethora of experiences to make up. How do you find yourself choosing this particular snapshot to represent the relationship?
Well, there are 2 ways that I got into the story. First of all, it is not autobiographical. When I wrote this story, this book was published in 2016. I probably wrote this story 10 years even before that. My mother is very much alive, very vital. And it was very easy to foresee that if things go the way we expect, I would one day be caring for my mother. I'm an only girl in the family. I'm the oldest. So I knew what that meant, whether I liked it or not. And I loved my mother, but did not necessarily relish the idea of caregiving. So I was envisioning that happening, that destiny, and writing about that destiny, gendered destiny of women to caregive. So that was one idea. And then the other idea is my own mother. The part that is autobiographical is that my own mother completely subsumed her life for the benefit of the children. It is very traditional. And I had very little sense of who she was as a yearning human being. And I think she had very little sense of that herself. And I remember once when she was much older asking her, well, what were your dreams? And she laughed at me and said, what's a dream? Like, that was frivolous, who's got time for that? And so I also wanted to talk about how invisible women become because of the roles that they are forced upon them, and how that plays out. And so here's a daughter who may have had more choice in her life because of her mother's sacrifice, at least partially. And she gets to the end of the journey and realizes she has no idea really who this woman is until she hears the woman singing and has an inkling. So the story is in what the daughter has missed by the mother's gift of herself to the next generation.
So that's why she's wearing the gown at the end.
Why is she wearing a gown, Kelly?
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
Okay, so
we get to ask you.
This is how Flash works, because it can be a little bit fuzzy at the end. And I think often the idea is that we take you to a certain point in a scene. Okay, we've compressed all this stuff that's happening, the character, the plot, everything is so compressed. Where are you taking it? Like, what's happening to you at the end of this story? And what are you thinking? And I don't mind saying what I was thinking, which I'll say last.
But we could tell you what we were thinking.
But I would love to hear what you were thinking. That's the gift of Flash, I think.
Yeah.
Is everyone is reading a different story.
Well, I said, so she's heading toward the veil. And I said, is that the veil between life and death? I assumed possibly. And then I thought that she was back, like either going to some magnificent event, like in her glory with her lipstick on and her gown, and she was heading off into this triumphant moment. But I never made a projection of like, where is she? I mean, I just thought like she's heading off into something more wonderful that she clearly deserves. And then she was singing before, so she had her voice back. So I'd be curious. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I thought it was kind of, because you're talking about sheets and laundry, so I thought, this was what the narrator kind of assumed or thought her mother would dress her in for her funeral, especially with the black gown.
Oh.
But I'd also love to ask about your whole flash fiction process, because I didn't know what flash fiction was until I came here and went to the workshop with Eli. Do you have a time limit? Do you have like a word or inspiration? Like, how do you structure that?
Yes. It comes. Yeah. Sometimes I have an image that I write into. Sometimes I have a line that I've read that I know that's either the beginning or the end. And so you make the rest of it. Sometimes there actually is something concrete that I want to write adjacent to, for whatever, we all we don't really want to put anybody's business out there, but what if blah, 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 and so you write something adjacent to that. So it however the inspiration comes, and you can't have a time limit. It has to take its time, whatever that is. So some of the longest were the quickest to write. Some of the shortest were the longest to write. You just never know how that works. You got to let it tell you what it needs.
I would want to return real quick to the question that Kelly had, because that's such a beautiful thing about Flash, is that there's just enough to launch the reader's imagination. I think I can hear my mom singing, by the end of this. And she doesn't sing. And that's a beautiful thing.
Neither did this mom, apparently, until...
Yeah. But to even have some weird kind of sonic or tonal earworm, because I don't have a real scene in my head. I can't even imagine it, but I can feel it. And I think that's a really beautiful kind of tonal drop off for a reader.
Well, I will, I don't want to play hide the ball. I don't mind telling you what I was thinking. It's not a test.
Yes, tell us.
And so in my mind, the daughter does doze off and dreams of her mother finally having her moment on stage and finally having her voice and going out. And the daughter realizes that if her mother had that, maybe she wouldn't have had the life she did have. So she's calling her mother won't turn around, which says,
she's right. If that had happened,
exactly.
She might not
exactly. Her mother would have chosen herself.
Right.
I've had many people tell me that they felt like it was the funeral.
Interesting.
And that she died in that moment. So, and I love that interpretation.
But isn't it interesting for women that it's an either or scenario there, right? Like it wouldn't be an either or for the man.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, maybe things are changing, but traditionally back in the day, she had to make the choice. Yeah.
Yes. I agree.
Do you have another one?
Oh, what, you guys, I could do this for, we go to Yemen Cafe after this and I could keep asking questions.
That's amazing.
I don't know.
This is exciting.
Maybe we can.
No, keep going.
Oh, this doesn't need to be a question, but one thing I love too about Flash, maybe this is about writing adjacent to things. And for me, there was almost like 3 planes to this story. And then that it's in the present tense as the mother's washing the back. And then it goes 2 months ago with this anecdote. And then it goes to dream state. And it just feels like, it's like a 3-act play almost. These things are able to move almost like a horse and chess maybe. And you can look at it from a different angle until you're able to be free and to see it in a new way in this dream state. That's not a question. I'm just trying to look at it and understand it.
Yeah.
That's a great observation.
I do like to, when I can, have a little bit of magical realism, or, that's what people call it in my culture, which is Black Southern culture. There's no line between the here and the hereafter. People go back and forth all the time. And so I like to include that a little bit. So you don't quite know what's real and what's being dreamed. Is it really being spoken? Is it not? Are there spirits? Are there not? And there's a few stories, I think, that play with that a lot.
And flash fiction seems like a great place to do that because you don't have to have any of the explanations on the page. It all happens so quickly that you can just be in this dream state and leave it there.
It's a playground.
Yeah, it's a playground. Fiction. Yeah. You ready for your next one?
All right. So the next one is called Cartoon Blue. And I have not read this one aloud in a really long time. So let's see what happens.
I have a lot to say about this one.
Okay. Cartoon Blue. My desk is molasses brown with claret undertones. My chair is Williamsburg blue, tufted with gold buttons. It's on casters so that it rolls easily on the mossy carpet. My phone has 3 lines. My secretary answers 2 of them. The office smells of wood polish and leather, like the inside of a new car. There are high, bright windows that I stare out of all day. My suit is charcoal and my blouse is ivory with a tasteful rounded collar. My attire hides the troublesome swell of my breasts, the daring rise of my belly. My skin is scent-free, my nails painted clear. My voice is low, especially when clients are seated in front of my desk. It forces them to lean into my authority. They rise when I rise, sit when I sit. The phone rings and my secretary puts the conference call through. My binder for the closing is black. On the credenza, a gold pendulum swings beneath the clock. Voices are a metronome. The sun rises to a higher yellow. After an hour on the phone, the buildings outside begin to cast an afternoon shadow. The pages of the binder fan me as I flip through them. On the other side of my door, a paper bag rattles. My secretary is eating at her desk again. There is the burble of a straw. The choking waft of onions drags my morning sickness into the afternoon. I try to concentrate on the voices or on the mantel clock, its gold noose swinging. My stomach starts to roil. Bile rises. I mute the phone to retch quickly into the garbage can. Are you there? Has she been cut off? No, I'm still here, I say, my throat burning. Suddenly, something warm seeps between my legs. My eyes open wide with the fear of loss, but my voice remains steady. The sky is cartoon blue. The call ends after we schedule the closing. I stand easy. I walk past the secretary, my thighs slicking. I wonder if she can smell the salty tang of ocean. The ladies' bathroom has only 2 stalls. No one dreamed that more than a handful of women would ever work here. The floors are granite tombstones. I sit in a stall, but not for the usual business. Someone might hear me, so I hold my breath while my womb weeps. Beneath me runs a clotted river. The water is red. The walls are cooling board brown.
Okay, I'll start this one off because I was just shocked by the use of the senses in this story, and it's probably hard to pick it up when you're just hearing it aloud like that. But just to make it clear, for in terms of sight, we have Williamsburg blue with the blue gold buttons, high bright windows, rounded color, charcoal suit, binder is black, gold pendulum, sun rises to a higher yellow. Later, the buildings cast an afternoon shadow. The secretary is eating. That, in terms of sight, she sees her eating, right? The mantel clock, its gold noose swinging. Ladies' room with 2 stalls. The floors are dark granite. Blood running red. Walls cooling board brown. Swell of her breasts and belly. People rising when she rises, and then cartoon blue. Not to go through them all, but then there's the sound, right? Which you layer in. The voice is low. The phone rings. The pendulum's ticking. Voices are metronomes, and it's really an incredible, I could go on and on, but then there's the smell, right? The wood polish, the leather, the inside of a new car, the skin is scent free. There's onions, smell of vomit, salty tang of the ocean. And then there's taste, onions, bile, vomit, ocean blood, and touch, the feel of the leather, the new car. So all of this is just layering in. And so I guess my question for you is, it's such a multi-sensory experience. Did that all come to you or were you consciously layering in all of those sensual experiences?
So what I wanted to capture was something that many women who are pregnant experience, and that is the heightened senses, all of them. I'd say it's like you're feral. Yeah. And you can hear that tick-tock, and it's like tick-tock, and you can smell the onions, and it's like your nose is in the center of an onion, I do remember when I was pregnant, opening the refrigerator door and just feeling like I'm just going to roil, or in an elevator. Not only are you moving, but there's all these human beings in a very compressed space. So the world was like much more dangerous, and all of the senses, all these things are coming at you right now. It feels like a low hum, but as a pregnant person, it feels like the world is screaming at you.
Yeah,
every last one of your senses.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that presented itself in the story. And for me, it's like, it didn't come out in one thing. I did a lot of it, and then I had to go back and pick the exact details I wanted, Okay. So that's the editing of which ones are in there. Yeah. So how easy would it be if this person was at a carnival, or was at a concert or whatever? No, this person is alone in an office, in a sterile, quote unquote, office building. And I wanted that to be just as hostile as it would have been had they been stuck in that elevator with 500 other people. And so you pick different details, like the sun is one of them, the smell of the leather, even in a sterile environment, there's still a lot coming at you.
And what comes across is that everything that she's wearing, everything that she's doing is muted. Like she's got her gray suit on, the black binder. She's doing everything. And even her collar is rounded, which, there's no points. There's nothing hostile about a rounded collar, right? Mm-hmm. And yet all of this stuff is coming at her feeling like so bright, so cartoon blue, right? So too much.
Yeah. And then also the cartoon blue also was a counterpoint. And again, this is something that I know people have felt. How can the world be happy right now when this is happening to me? Okay. How can the sky be this blue when this is happening to me? And so I wanted a lot of brightness and a lot of not emotion, but just glare, coming at a time where she's losing her pregnancy. It's like the world is coming to an end.
Right.
And then also she can't really scream it or say it. That's got to be buttoned down, because of where she is.
Right. And the fact that she's one of the first, clearly.
Right.
It doesn't say what year this is, but there's only 2 bathrooms.
Right.
And, yeah. I'll let Eli go.
Building on what Kelly said with regard to the senses, our prompt for this one had a lot to do with what you might call exposition. Not narrative writing, just if you were to describe everything in the room, you're thinking of exposition writing. And so our challenge was, how do you create drama or character just by virtue of describing a space? Mm-hmm. And we just felt like this does it so excellently, but more and more so, we come to know this particular character's experience as they move through this space. Since I've read it more, I realized that a lot of the exposition is framed actually by the word my, which I thought was interesting. I counted 23 my's in this story.
And just that completely.
But what is this person's and what do they have and what are they losing and what is ever actually yours in a space like this kind of office? Maybe my question is more like I have a friend named Shannon in our Flash Fiction Club, and her response to this story is that it feels like it's a lot about loss. There's a very literal loss, but also the loss of self in a space like this. I guess I want to hear about the office aspect of this story.
I think sort of the bottom line is that women didn't belong there. There was no place for women there. You can't bring your femaleness to this space. And so when you hide your breasts and you button down and you got dark colors on and, you're doing everything to not be too girl, not upset anybody. And then you have a miscarriage in the middle of it, like the most girl thing you could do. You know what I'm saying? Like, what? What do you do with that? And so she does what one does, is you hide it, you don't acknowledge it. This is all the identities that we bring into these spaces. Like I had a dear friend, and this was in the 80s, who was in a long-term same-sex relationship, and he broke up, and he was telling me the story that he came to work. Basically, he'd had a divorce. This is before gay marriage, and he couldn't even tell anyone he had actually been married in the first place. Yeah. He could not describe his loss at all with people who saw him every single day, And so to your point, it is loss of identity that people do that to conform. And it's not just the women and it's not just the LGBTQ people. It's not the men doing it too. This hurts men as well. But this story is about what it is like to have a quintessential female experience and not be able to say anything about it. And just pretend it's not happening, and what that's like. And be fully alone. Yeah. I mean, not even to the extent of knowing other women have been locked behind this door and have had that same experience. There's not even enough stalls for that to have been any kind of experience, for other people in that place. So,
does anyone have a question? Yes.
Yeah, I was fascinated to hear a male response and question to this, because it is such a, as you said, intimate female experience. I've experienced it 3 times, but one time just like at your story.
mm-hmm.
And so I was just curious, what's he got to say? You know what I mean? Not to denigrate what you did say, but when I saw you were going to speak, I really wanted to know what the hell is he going to say?
Mm.
And I heard.
Yeah.
Are you saying that he doesn't have a right to say something, to respond?
No, I was just curious.
How it struck,
Does he see this?
like how it struck him. How it struck him.
Yeah.
And since you are part of the team up here, what would you think is important enough to bring up, because it's going to be recorded for posterity?
Right.
So what is it that
Yeah.
you had to say? I
Yeah.
was just curious.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say this. I write for women, and really I write for one woman, and that's my mother. Okay? And I don't care what anybody has to say about any of my stories. Okay? I'm talking to my mom. Okay? Who has passed away since, but in drilling down into that relationship and having that conversation, I have learned so much about how broadly the stories touch people that you would never imagine. And I have been in some very strange places talking about this book, places where there were no Black people. For example, I have done this in a senior home where I was a little bit nervous about how some of the themes were going to hit. And to a person, people are bringing themselves openly and their experiences to the table. If we are lucky as women experiencing something like this, there are people there to catch us if we're lucky. And they're not all your mom or your best friend, your partner or whoever impregnated you. If that's the process she went through, might also be experiencing some kind of loss. And that's not acknowledged either. And in fact, if I'm the one having the miscarriage, there might not ever be a permission for a male partner to say anything about it. Like you were saying, what have you got to say about it? This is happening to my body. Well, it's happening. Different things are happening to everyone, but something is happening to everyone. And there's a couple of stories in here that play with that idea of, so there's one story, it's called Home for the Holidays. A male and a female married couple, are driving home for the holidays. The woman and they're taking turns driving. They got 2 kids in the back seat. It's a Black family. The woman is driving at night where nothing good happens. They're driving at night, and these people in a truck, white men in a truck, try to drive them off the roads. Okay. And she's the one behind the wheel. Everyone's asleep in the car when it starts. And it sort of subverts, like the man isn't behind the wheel to protect the family. And he's got to trust that she's going to have control. And she gets the car off of a ramp and everything's okay, but then it's not okay. Like they're totally rattled. And so that happens to him. He's not the one driving, but it's happening to him because he can't drive. And that is he's socialized to do that and to protect. So he's neutered at a time where their family is being racially attacked. And actually, this is how racism works against Black families in particular. You neuter the man, put the woman in front of the wheel, and then you get at her more easily. This is how it works. Black men are attacked and neutered. So it happened to everybody in the car. And everybody in the car is having a different experience. And then you have to wonder, is she going to resent him because he was asleep at the time and wasn't there to protect them? I mean, that racism drives a wedge into the relationship and the marriage, into the power dynamic. So as well could a miscarriage, as well could caregiving, you know? So I kind of like it when I get to hear different takes on it, because it's not on the page, but it is part of the lived experience of the listener or the reader. Okay. All right. Here's the last story. It's called Disappearing Girl. When you hear the title Disappearing Girl, does that evoke anything for anyone?
Yeah.
Another title of another famous work, maybe? Pardon? Gone Girl. Wow, that's good. Okay. I like that.
Invisible Man.
Invisible Man. Okay. All right. Just wondering. All right. Disappearing Girl. My minivan churns impatiently as I wait in the long queue. Up ahead, it's easy to spot my daughter in the gaggle of starched, school-crested shirts and navy blue pants. She's the only one with brown eyes and skin to match. She's the only one whose thick black hair is tamed into stiff braids. She is standing apart, her eyes scanning the row of cars, a refugee on a hostile shore, waiting for an airlift. When she finally sees our car, she shoulders her heavy book bag, too full of academic pressure for a fourth grader, and a smile lands on her face. She is not ashamed to show me the beautiful wall-off gap in her front teeth. She waves desperately, as if otherwise I might miss her, the lone Black child in a sea of white. Finally, she opens the door and jumps into the back seat. "How was your day?" I say brightly, swallowing the stress of having to pick her up from private school every afternoon. She buckles in and opens her daily treat. Today, it's a bag of Doritos and bottled tea. No time to get to the store for apples. Bad mom. She says nothing but munches quietly and looks out of the window. We pass the blonde girls yelling things out of the car like, "Call me if you want to go riding," or "Don't forget your swimsuit." At 10, my daughter wants, more than anything, to be chosen. She has a crush on Henry Frank. The kids call him Hank Frank, as if it was one word. My daughter has a chance with Hank Frank because he's funny, goofy, already eccentric, probably gay. I turn off the radio, which I always do when the kids are in the car, just in case something bubbles up from their mysterious lives. Lately, my daughter has become impenetrable. When I hug her, she stiffens. Even though I am her lifeboat, she will not touch me. She is the kind of lonely that cannot be explained, so it becomes someone else's fault, mine. Did you know that I'm invisible? Her words come in a scratchy little girl voice, but she's too old for make-believe. She's stating a fact. My heart is a block of ice. I glance at her in the rearview mirror. She keeps eating Doritos vacantly. Suddenly, I am 6. It's 1967, and my first grade teacher, Mrs. Houston, is so severe, every inch of me wants to please her. I figure out after the first day that I'm smarter than the other kids, the white kids. Every day, I want to prove my worth to Mrs. Houston by giving her the right answers. She calls on the other children. I don't understand why she doesn't see me. I stretch my hand higher, accent my eagerness with a few oohs, but she still gazes over my head to the dolt behind me with the ruby curls. This is not what I had imagined when I longed to go to school. I dreamed of friends and books and scissors and the sweet smell of paste. I dreamed of chalk scraping on the board and gold stars on my homework. I never dreamed I would disappear. My daughter finishes her Doritos and crumples the bag loudly. I stop the car in front of the manicured lawn of a stranger. I get out and open my daughter's door. She tracks me wide-eyed, afraid she's in trouble. I unlock her seatbelt and I pull her out of the car. Her classmates peer at us curiously as they drive by in their mom's SUVs. She doesn't know it yet, but after today, my daughter will never see them again. I take her shoulders and gaze into her eyes. I look at her so long that the hard resentment of her spine bends toward me. Her anger softens to tears. I can see you, I say, taking her into my arms. Poor baby.
Well, so this is what I just said. This story breaks my heart. I hate that this is our world even more now than I thought it was changing, but it's fucking not. And so I just, I'm struck here that this could be any year, is what I said. Even in the present day, it's also the same thing that happened to the mother, happening all over again. So again, this is a visual piece. Right away, we know we're in an elite school with the school crested shirts and the navy blue pants. And we have the visual of the daughter, the only one with the brown eyes and skin to match, the only one with her thick black hair tamed into stiff braids. She's standing apart, a refugee on a hostile shore waiting for airlift. And then I, was trying to think of like what makes us, all of the details you give us that let us know that it's hostile territory, the girls calling out to each other, that very heavy backpack that she's wearing. And the only hope she has is someone else who's being marginalized too.
Right.
So there were things I noticed about the story before I ask you any questions, like the minivan is personified as it churns impatiently. And I didn't know the history of the Wolof Gap. So do you want to, or should I?
Well, it is the Wolof tribe in West Africa is known for a very large gap in the front teeth. And to this day, you will see African Americans, not to a number, but it's not uncommon to see a very big pronounced gap, and it's ancestral. And actually, my actual real daughter did have a gap like that, and it pained me to close the gap with braces, which I did do. But we always told her it was
because it's considered beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And we always told her it was beautiful. So, and we actually did it because of medical reasons, like she was missing teeth. And we had to pull her whole bridge forward. But for that, we probably would not have done it.
Thank you for reading that, Desiree. I just think that this is one of the most well-wrought, beautiful, immersive scenes I've read in a long time. It's just so harrowing, this image of her standing apart, eyes scanning a row of cars, a refugee on a hostile shore. But there are also these charming, beautiful sprinkles in there, like the Doritos, like Hank Frank, and like the Gap. And so my reading through this, it just felt like we're going through this scene of observation with just these sort of asides at the ends of paragraphs, like bad mom at the end of paragraph 3, or she is the kind of lonely that cannot be explained, so it becomes someone else's fault. And then just the one sentence, mine. It just was so well balanced to go through the scene and then to get just these really compact windows into the feeling of our narrator. And then it all comes in ahead for me with, she doesn't know it yet, but after today, my daughter will never see them again. So it was just such a release there because you could feel it, the guilt building up, just kind of working through the story. It was really powerful there. My question is with regard to the she doesn't know it yet, but after today, it feels like in many ways, this character's been through this same after-school procedure a lot. So in our Flash Fiction Club, there was a lot of readings about what does it mean that she doesn't know yet? When when did our narrator make a decision about what it meant for the daughter to not see these people again? Or what does it even mean for her to not see them again? Literally, in some sense. I'm curious, as a writer, how you formulated that sentence and how you wanted it to land.
Do you mind if I get some feedback about how the mother may have formulated that and why in that moment? And I'd be happy to answer it after I get to hear a little bit.
It'd be great.
Does anybody want to talk about that?
I'll have to go first. But I just want to thank you because this poem sat with me and I carried it because I was that kid, right? And especially around 9/11, I was that kid. And seeing you write it and then the mother's care for it, it's like the poem has been carried my whole life. For me, I saw it as an impulse decision because I, like in that moment, like seeing her daughter say she's invisible, because, and especially how authoritative kind of your metaphors were beforehand, like it was like, you are her lifeboat, your heart is a block of ice, like there's a lot of certainty. And I see from the kind of maybe now as an adult, the older perspective of you want your kids to get the best education they can get, right? But then when you realize the consequences of it, I think right then when you hug her, you're like, no, like, in front of, some rich person's house. But that's my interpretation of it. But anyway, it's beautiful. It's wonderful.
Thank you, sir. Oh, in the back, yeah.
I just have to say that I think the mother could see what the daughter was going through and could empathize with her during some of the same thing. She said, I can feel your anguish. I will make this right. We will take action. And mother, I will help you through this.
But it's interesting. It's like the situation with the woman where she has to make a choice whether to sing or raise children. And now in this story, because of the racism that they're experiencing, she has to take her out of a school that she thinks is better because like there's an either or here, which is just fueled by the racism in society. And that's an interesting thing that like I just realized sort of that theme runs throughout the book of being sort of locked into a situation that's bigger than you are, right? Like, so the way that you say know the mother, and it's the mother,
Right.
Yeah.
Writ large.
Yeah, writ large.
Yeah.
And that's you want to talk about the cover really
Okay,
quickly?
I will.
Yeah.
But I do want to respond. Yes to all of what you all said. I mean, I think one thing I was really going for is the integration experiment and what has it cost. And there's an assumption that there's an inherent value in integration. And this story challenges that. I think the mother thinks that it is for the best for her child to be in this school environment, but what is better? And that's completely a value judgment that is not aligned with her values. And so she's really subjecting her child to more torture and to the destruction of the child's selfhood and self-esteem, which happened to her. And it's time to interrupt that cycle for her. I think, though, the Invisible Man, I was thinking about how we do become invisible in those environments, and it is extremely painful. And really think about what integration costs the Black community. And that's not a conversation America wants to have, because we want to say it's bottom line of value to live in an integrated society. But Detroit knows a lot about that and how we are only integrated for the time that it takes whites to move and Blacks to come in. It's a Venn diagram. It's not a permanent situation. That's the only time we're integrated. And then it segregates again, and then populations move. So it's never integrated. It's always resegregating. So anyway, that was one of the ideas behind the story.
Did you want to ask about the book cover?
Oh yeah, the book cover.
The book cover.
Yes.
So this is this cover is by a South African artist, and it's actually one piece of art that's wrapped around the book. And the name of it is called Guess Who? It's a digital artist, Karen Miller. She's a white South African. And does anybody know, this is an actual person, kind of a famous actual person. Does anybody recognize the person? Do you?
Well, I know.
Oh, you know?
I know, so I won't say.
Okay, I did not know this when I fell in love with this art. Queen Elizabeth. Oh, ding, ding, ding! You almost won. This is so. I have the Queen Elizabeth in blackface on the cover of my book about mothers. This is amazing. I did not know that that's what was happening, but I loved it. But I was attracted because it does bring out like the racial overtones to the gender, and this is such a perfect 1950s looking ideal mother, you know. And then she's black on the front, white on the back, and then the hands are the reverse color.
That's perfect. Yeah.
So I was so excited when I found this art, and I talked that there was a different cover that was the design. I'm like, it's not better than this. And they reached out to the South African designer, and she gave permission for us to use it.
And that's unusual because a lot of times, you know, presses will not let you choose the cover.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You have
exactly.
to fight for it. Yeah.
Not only that, not only as the author do you usually not have a lot of say in the cover, but also the artist. This is my first book. The artist knew nothing really about me.
That's
I think we
amazing.
sent her the manuscript, but still, that was taking a risk to associate her work with this. So
Very
totally
cool.
amazing.
Well, we're almost out of time. I think we are out of time, but does anyone have a last question that they really want to ask, or?
Sure.
Where were you in your journey as a mother when you were writing?
Where was I as a mother writing the stories? So the stories, I wrote the stories over the course of probably 15 to 20 years. And so I was in all of the stages except myself being the elder. And one reason I was writing flash, I'm a trained journalist, so I'm trained to write short. That's one thing. And then also writing, child launching, blah, 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 blah. Who can write a novel? I can't. So I was able to sort of get things down in a manageable way by going to Flash before I knew what Flash was. All I knew was that the stories were coming out tight and small. And it's kind of how I write. So people talk about, how do you write small? And I'm like, how do you write big? I don't know how to do that. I'm just learning that now. So it was just a kind of a product of where I was in my life and how many stories. For example, I really consciously went through, what about like when you're pregnant at work? What about when you're at home, you know, cooking dinner? What about when you're losing your memory? What about, I was thinking of like all these different experiences, breast cancer. I was thinking about all these different experiences that women commonly have. And I wanted as many permutations of that to be represented in the book. So in my mind, I was writing stories about, yeah, what about that example? What happens with that? You know, I'm going to write a story about that. So I kind of took the themes that I was seeing from my friends from just being a woman in America and spinning them out to stories.
Desiree Cooper, we can't thank you enough for being here.
Thank you. This
can we
has
all
been
give
so
you a round of
fun.
applause?
This has been so fun. Thank you.
Thank you for
guys.
hosting, Eli. Thank you so much.
For reading, for deep diving, and for being the first in here to go through this with us. So
Oh,
thank you.
You guys were so good, so kind. I appreciate it.
You all please hang out. We'll put on some music. We'll have some snacks. Thank you to our great audience for being here as well.
Yes. Thank you. And go to Let's Deconstruct a Story podcast.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So
On
good.
Apple or Spotify. So.
And Substack.
And Substack. Substack is where you get the stories so you can read them ahead of time and then listen to the podcast.